Hello and welcome everyone to the latest installment of the Portent webinar series. My name is Colin Parker and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar, Hyperlocal Analytics or Street Corner Tracking Made Easy with Michael Weekend, who's our head analytics architect here at Portent. We'd love it if you would all join in on this webinar. This is going to be some fairly cutting edge stuff. I expect we'll have a lot of questions. There are a couple of ways you can do that. One is by asking your questions within the questions pane of GoToWebinar, and the other is by tweeting your questions using the hashtag PortentU. So that's #PortentU. And just so you all know, in case you miss out on any of today's webinar or want to review or share this later with a dev team or a colleague, don't worry, we will send out a follow-up email, and that'll contain the link to this recorded webinar, a SlideShare link to the presentation deck, and all of the links that Michael will be referencing in this session. So without further ado, please welcome Michael Weekend. Hey, Michael, take us away.
Thank you, Colin. Hi, everybody. We're coming at you live from the Smith Tower in beautiful downtown Seattle. And what you see in the background of this first slide is actually an old early 20th century Seattle City Light ad where presumably the devil or Zeus, I can't really tell which one, is beaming electricity down on the public from the top of our beautiful building here. We're not going to beam electricity at you, obviously, but we will teach you about how to get this bird's eye view perspective on potential customers who visit your website. When we start talking about hyperlocal analytics, the first hot button issue that we run into here is privacy. And it's really a valid concern, but I'm going to put you guys' mind at ease for a second here, and we'll talk about this in the context of some other privacy issues that are currently going on with connected devices to the internet. I've built this handy levels of creepy scale, so I'll show you this scale now. What we're doing is relatively harmless for one reason that I'll explain to you in a minute. But there are far worse things gathering people's information today on the web. As an example here, you're signing up for an account with Nike and you're giving them information about your heart rate, how many calories you burn, where you're going for your daily run, and a lot more than we're tracking about somebody on the web. And that's pretty unnerving. And then there's this guy sitting across from you at the park taking pictures with his Google Glass. And that's really repulsive, honestly. And it's one of the reasons Google is having problems selling Google Glass. People don't want their privacy compromised by folks that are wearing one around them. And then I want you to just stop and think about all the information that you've given Facebook in the last few years. And honestly, if that doesn't make you weep, then I question whether you're human. We're giving them everything from the friends and the people we communicate with the most, to our family members, to pictures and where we are when we're taking them. We're checking into the shows we like and the movies we watch, and really the vast amount of information that Facebook has really it makes everything else pale in comparison in terms of a tracking perspective. The reason what we're doing is a lot less creepy today is we are not using any personally identifiable information, right? Google Analytics won't allow us to pass in things like someone's name, email address, or phone number. So while we know where they are, in today's session, we'll figure out where they are exactly, what they've done on our website. We're not going to be looking at who they are unless you sync the information that we gain today with a much more secure customer database. So for all those reasons, what we're doing today is a lot less creepy than it seems. So let's get into what you'll learn today. We'll get into building the framework that you need to collect all of this hyperlocal data. And then we'll actually talk about accumulating that data into your analytics platforms and maybe even a database or flat files if you want to consume them that way as well. Just collecting all of this in a place where we can store it safely. Hopefully you guys all have security on your databases. And then lastly, we'll visualize and analyze this data to make an impact on your marketing channels and efforts. And that's really the most important bit out of all of this. It's great to have another data source, but it's really what you do with it that's the most important thing. So what will you need to do all of this, right? We'll get into the requirements here now. First, you'll need a code editor. And don't be too shocked here. We're only going to be editing one piece of code today in this exercise, and really I'm going to give that to you after this webinar anyway. So, but modifying it will teach you a little bit about how we gather the data that's necessary for this exercise. I like to use a code editor called Brackets. It's open source, it's free, at least on the Mac platform. Pretty sure they have a PC version as well. And it won't inject any strange, weird characters into your code like word processors or text editors can. So I highly recommend getting it. Then you'll need an account with Geonames. It's a huge database paired with an API that actually takes the customer information that we're going to be feeding it in a JavaScript, and it returns to you corresponding neighborhood and postal code information about that person. We're going to be supplying it with latitude and longitude coordinates from the browser, and then we're going to be getting back this rich information about neighborhood and postal code in the United States. Then you'll need Google Tag Manager. It's really the backbone of how you're going to deploy this code to your website, hopefully without bothering anybody on your development team. It gives a lot of power to the marketer to actually implement what you need on websites for tracking requirements and things like that. It's really a massively powerful tool. If you're not using this on your website, please go out and get this now. There are many other reasons besides what we're doing today for you to have Google Tag Manager. Then you need an analytics platform to receive this rich geolocation information that we're getting back from the APIs and from Geonames. Personally, I prefer Google Analytics. It's got a truckload of really enterprise level functionality in class, and it's vastly easy to use. You can pump the same information into other analytics platforms like Adobe Analytics or Core Metrics, or things like that. So if you don't have this analytics platform, don't worry, you'll still be able to use this information. But GA is really the easiest way to do it, in my opinion. Plus, it's free, so it's pretty awesome in that respect. Then you'll need your trusty old friend Microsoft Excel. I don't know how often you guys are in Excel, but I pretty much live and breathe in it. If I'm not pivoting things and segmenting in Excel, that I'm getting data out from an analytics platform and sending it into other visualization tools using Excel. So it's really handy to use and have. And if you don't have it on your computer for some reason, you haven't bought the latest version of Office, you can do this in Google Sheets too. So just a spreadsheet tool. And then finally, you'll need an account from this provider called Mapline. They're a great visualization tool and localization tool. There's a free version of it that will allow you to test what we're going over today, but then there's a paid version that runs about $90 a month, and it has all the cool bells and whistles. You can do heat maps with it. You can do custom little map markers with it. Just has some really great ways to visualize this data that we're going over today. So hopefully, with all of those requirements and the things that you learn, you won't have to bother your developers at all. Maybe just to place a Google Tag Manager container on your site, but really they have better things to do, especially if you're an e-commerce retailer, or if you have a B2B site where your developers are really having to do some great work on that site. You want them free to do things like that, not to have to set up tracking. So hopefully we'll be kind to your developers. So I have to go, and now that we've kind of gone through what you'll learn today, I'll start talking about the inspiration behind this tracking solution that I've crafted here. I can't take credit for all of it. In fact, the first thing is about 6 months ago, I read an article by this guy named Saif Sharif, and I met him actually a couple of years ago at the Google Analytics Summit in the Bay Area in California. We had a great little networking event, and so I started paying closer attention to the post that he wrote on Lunametrics, which is a great blog about analytics. And it covered how to add what they called street level insight to GA. And it went through kind of the different elements that are involved in this implementation. So I've took that and I've kind of spun it into kind of my own rendition of collecting this data, but this was really inspirational for me from the outset. So we'll go over what that involved. So the crux of how you get at this geo data is HTML5 and modern web browsers. So HTML5 has a geolocation feature built in, and modern browsers like Google Chrome and Safari, and I'm pretty sure the latest versions of Internet Explorer have this capability as well, as much as I am loath to represent my Microsoft browser in any talk, really. They all have this HTML5 functionality that captures a user's latitude and longitude without needing to ask for their address or any other information. So what you'll see is that they're prompted in the browser to either allow or deny, and we'll go over that a little bit later, to give you this information. So it very much is an opt-in for the customer to allow your website to capture some more rich geographic information. Why this is a lot better than just utilizing your analytics tool to see where people are is your analytics tool only goes to the city level of granularity. So if you're a local business that has multiple store locations in a single city, that's pretty useless information for you, because you want to know where people are at in specific neighborhoods, where people in specific zip codes are interacting with your business and in your website. So we're going to get into how to get that information. The other facet was importing directly into Google Analytics in the case of Lunametrics implementation, this neighborhood information from Geonames that I mentioned earlier. And so you're actually able to get reporting on that in GA. And so they actually provided a script for how to implement this. And one thing that you'll notice about this script is that it sends this information directly to Google Analytics. There's no intermediary for this. So I tweaked this a little bit by sending the information to Google Tag Manager first. And so that allows us to not only inject the latitude and longitude and neighborhood information about somebody into GA, but it also allows us to send it into other analytics tools if you want as well. So anything that'll interact with Google Tag Manager, we can send this information into. So it just gives a lot more flexibility. So lastly, just another shout out to my buddy Saif Sharif. I'm gonna get this information out to him a little bit later on and give him a shout out, but he also responds heartily to comments on the Lunametrics blog. So if you ever have a question about his post, he's really responsive and great about that. He's a good guy. But I tweaked his implementation a little bit. And first, I modified the code. So this is the way Saif's script looked like for doing this implementation. So we'll actually jump into this in brackets, that code editor that I talked about. And you can see this highlighted information right here. It sets all of the latitude and longitude information that we get from the Geonames API, and it sends it directly into Google Analytics. I wanted a little bit more flexibility, like I mentioned earlier, and so I modified it to actually surface it to the data layer in Google Tag Manager. So that allows me to redeploy it to any other analytics tool that I want to get this data into. So it's really helpful in that respect. I made a couple other minor modifications. mainly around if there isn't a neighborhood found, which sometimes that's the case when we get a latitude and longitude coordinate. If somebody's way out in the boonies and they're not in a kind of urban environment, sometimes there's no neighborhood found for that person and there's just a zip code. So we actually modified the code to set to basically print out not set if there's no neighborhood name found. So I'm going to supply this code, so don't worry if this all looks like Greek or gobbledygook to you. We'll send out this code afterwards. And so after modifying the code, the second thing for me to do is actually to start a Geonames account. If you notice in the code block, I say your username here. That's because you actually have to set up a Geonames account and plug in your username when you're done doing that. So we'll walk through that process now. So you go to geonames.org. It's a really bare bones site, but it has really great database and functionality. And so you will actually want to go up to where it says login. They kind of don't have really super great user experience on their site. So Geonames, if you want to talk to me about UX, let's do that. So once you go to login, it actually has a prompt for you to create a new user account. Please do not use my username for this because there are API limits. Set up your own, it's free. I'll show you how to do that in a sec. So you fill out your username, your email, and your password for this Geonames account. And then you get an email with an activation link. And after you've clicked on that activation link in the email, your account has been confirmed. But that doesn't mean that you can start querying the API from that script that I showed you earlier. You actually have to activate the web service. So there's one more step. So if you click on your username, there's a click here to enable the web services, the free web services. So you click on that guy, and then you get your final confirmation here that your new Geonames account has been successfully enabled and that you're able to actually send API requests through that code block that I'm going to be providing to you. So all you'll have to do in that code block is plug in your username. In this case, it's Portman Michael for me. And so now I want to take that script that I had in brackets and I actually want to paste it into Google Tag Manager and deploy it to my website. So to do this, I actually go into my Google Tag Manager account and I create a new tag. I want to choose actually a custom HTML tag. Since this is a JavaScript, it allows me to paste in either HTML or JavaScript and deploy it to my site pretty seamlessly. So I paste that in with all of my edits made. And then you want to choose where on your site that this script is going to fire. And the great thing about this script is a user on your website only sees it the first time they visit your website from a given machine, right? So either they allow or deny you to use their location information, and that's the only time they ever see that prompt or interact with the script at all. Each and every subsequent time they visit the site, they don't get prompted at all. It just, that one opt-in from them kind of gives you carte blanche to continue tracking them over time. They could obviously clear their cookies or do things like that, but by and large, most people are too lazy to do that. I know I have cookies on my machine that are years old, so not even I do it, and I know what I'm sending to people. So you actually want to fire this and deploy it to all pages because potentially people can land on your website from anywhere. If they do a Google search, they might not get your homepage every time, right? They might actually get a result for an internal page on your site. So you're going to want to be able to capture that user's information location if they'll give it to you on all pages of your site. So if you're only comfortable deploying this on some pages of your site, I understand, but just to see what your potential is for capturing opt-ins, I would actually deploy it to all pages at first and scale back if you need to later. The next thing that's really important and that this script is reliant on is jQuery. And it's usually jQuery is included on your site. If you have a really modern website, chances are you're probably using jQuery to do something else on your site, whether it be provide some kind of slick functionality as the user hits it, or just to utilize some kind of Google library to do some fancy JavaScript on your site as well. So chances are you probably already have jQuery. If you don't, then we'll actually need you to deploy jQuery through Google Tag Manager as well. And then you'll want to fire these tags in an order of priority as well. So this geolocation script is dependent on the jQuery to go out and actually fetch the neighborhood and zip code information from Geonames. So it has to have that jQuery first, whether it appears on your website or whether it appears in Google Tag Manager. So we're firing it in this order of priority. The jQuery, if you have it on your site or if you're firing it through Google Tag Manager, goes first. So you assign it a priority level of 2. The geolocation script goes next in line and an order of firing priority of 1. And then the lowest on the hierarchy is your analytics script. You're going to want to need jQuery and the geographic information before you fire off your analytics tag, so that every time a customer hits a page on your website, this geolocation information, if it exists, is passed along with that page view. So it's a hierarchy. It seems a bit complicated, but we'll get into why you do this in a little bit. The next thing you'll want to do to actually receive all of this rich geo information is set up custom dimensions in Google Analytics. Here's how you do that. If you go to the admin section in GA, which is typically someplace I wouldn't recommend you going if you're a real power user. In this case, I'm giving you a guide, so you can go ahead and do this on your own. You go into admin, and then in the middle under the property menu is custom definitions and custom dimensions. You're going to want to click on custom dimensions there. And then you actually set up new custom dimensions, and you're going to want to set up one for latitude, longitude, neighborhood, and postal code. And you're going to want to set those at the session level of scope. And so each user, if they only interact with your site once, you're going to get that session information, and it's going to follow them around as they see different web pages on your site. The reason we set it at the session level as opposed to the user level is the user level data expires after 90 days. It lapses. So we want to be able to hold on to the session information for much longer than that potentially. So we're going to set it at the session level scope for that. The next thing we're going to do is kind of accumulate this data using Google Tag Manager event tracking. We'll show you how to basically take the information that's being harnessed in the browser and then pass it through Google Tag Manager to Google Analytics. So in Google Tag Manager, you're going to have to do some configuration here. The first thing is set up the custom variables. This will basically set up a token for each of these pieces of information. If you scroll down, there are a bunch of built-in variables that Google Tag Manager by default already has the ability to get out of the browser, but we're going to have to set ones up specific for latitude, longitude, neighborhood, and postal code. So you're going to want to set up your own user-defined or custom variable here. So we're actually going to be gathering this from the data layer, which I explained in brackets earlier. That's why I'm surfacing all of this data to the data layer so we can grab it in GTM here. And then we're going to write out latitude here in both of these areas. We're going to repeat this process for longitude, neighborhood, and postal code. And if you noticed, I used neighborhood with a U, the British spelling of neighborhood. That's because the API, the Geonames API, actually uses it in that exact way. So we have to have the data layer variable set up to capture it that way as well. The next thing we're going to do is set a trigger so that our event tracking knows when to send this information into GA. So when the user opts in their browser, our script is actually going to send an event called postal code. So it basically is the last piece of information that Geonames sends you and the last piece of information that you actually collect in the browser. So we're actually going to have our trigger set to fire when it receives that postal code information. And then we're going to set up a tag to get this information into Google Analytics. So we set up your Google Analytics tracking ID, which is basically your account number for Google Analytics. We're sending this information into that account number. We're going to choose the event track type here. We're not tracking a page view. We're just going to set up an event that tells GA, okay, I've received the geographic information and I'm sending it into GA now. So we're going to actually tell GA in this way. We're going to set the geolocation as our event category, and the action our action verb here is set, right? And then we also want to tell it the page URL that this information was collected on, so that we know whereabouts this person was on your website when the information was collected. Some other things that we set here is the non-interaction hit. We want to set this always to true most of the time. That makes it so that this event, when it's fired, won't affect your bounce rate at all on your website. So it won't count as basically a second page view. And then those custom dimensions that we set up in GA just a moment ago, we're actually going to use those variables to pass information into those. So the custom dimensions are just numbered in Google Analytics from 3 to 6 is how we set those up in the previous step. And then I'm going to pass in all of that dynamic information that I'm gathering in the data layer for latitude, longitude, neighborhood, postal code into Google Analytics this way. And then we're going to use our trigger that we set up a moment ago, that beacon that basically says to Google Tag Manager, the postal code has been received. We're going to use that as our kind of jumping off point to say, okay, now it's safe to send that information into Google Analytics. And so after you've gone through that, provided you've done everything right, we're actually going to debug that in the browser and preview it so that we can see if the proper information is being retrieved from Geonames and being sent to Google Analytics. We're going to test both of those things in the browser itself. So you get to see a live preview of how it's working on your website before you even publish it. So in Google Tag Manager, this Publish menu, when you click on it, has a preview and debug feature. So you're going to want to click Preview, and it'll give you this now previewing your current version after you do that. So this is the opt-in prompt that I was talking about. So I set this up on portent.com a couple days ago just to start gathering some information for this talk. And when I did, all of our users started to see this block or allow message. We want to know your location. And the customer has the opportunity there to grant that permission. And so when I click allow, what you'll see here in the bottom left-hand corner is that the postal code was received back from Geonames, and it actually collected all of the information that we wanted it to. The latitude, it got that, the longitude, and then it got back from the Geonames API, it got back my zip code. In this case, it's 98104, the zip code here at the Smith Tower. And it also gets the neighborhood information as well. If you click on this neighborhood piece, and it actually says Pioneer Square or downtown for this location, depending. And it's funny, I said both of those things. It was neither. It actually said International District. So Sometimes it'll grab your latitude and longitude from the nearest cell tower or the nearest ISP relay point, internet service provider relay point. And for us, that's in the international district. So when I was sitting at my desktop, it kind of pinged the closest server from my internet service provider, and it gathered that data and it sent it into analytics here. So it's going into my analytics account. I can see here all of the 4 things that I wanted to capture. And so once you're sure that that's working right in the browser as you've previewed it, then you actually click publish to make this live on your website for every other person. So it tells you the tags and the triggers and the variables that we've set up. We went ahead and published those, and it'll give you a timestamp of when that went live on your website too. And so if you've done all this right, then you go into Google Analytics, and as people are allowing and accepting for you to retrieve their information, it'll fire that event that we set up in the tag earlier. The geolocation is set, and it'll tell you where these events are happening on your website too, and how often they're happening. So per second, per minute, you'll have this real-time view of the last 30 minutes so that you can see as you're testing it or as you've just published it and other people are starting to hit the site, you'll get this information in real time. And then in GA as well, as you go into the location reports, you'll actually be able to set latitude, longitude, postal code, and neighborhood as secondary dimensions in your reports here, and it'll start coinciding with the countries and city information that's already in GA. And so the last thing that you'll want to do to really start reporting on this data within Google Analytics itself is set up a custom report. And this is what my custom report parameters look like. If you go to the customization section of GA and you hit new custom report, you'll be prompted with this screen. So I'll set up all of the dimensions that I want in my report. In this case, I want to grab all of this rich geolocation information that I'm now collecting on the users, in addition to the marketing channel that they arrived at my site on. So that's what medium is right there. Also, because Geonames only works in the States and only has an API for neighborhood information in the United States, I'm actually filtering any information I receive on this down to the United States level in terms of country. So it excludes every other country. I'll only get the US stuff that I have the richest information about. And then you want to set some metrics about your site performance, right? Or that person's site performance. In this case, I'm collecting the session information from GA. So, how many times have they been to the website? Their average session duration, so how long are they spending on my website looking at content? And then the amount of goal completions. So I have on the Portent site, people can drop us a line through our content form or contact forms, I should say. They can read and consume blog posts and post comments on our blog posts, and they can download kind of PDFs and ebooks from our site as well. All of those are set as goal completions. So anytime anybody takes one of those actions, I want to know about it and know where they are when they're doing that. And so when you're done with this, I set this up right after I started collecting this information on Portent.com. So we only had a few users that had hit the site before then. So I could see that somebody from Little Havana in Miami had hit my site and where they came in, what marketing channel. They were a referral from another website. And then the sessions, average session duration, and goal completions. If you see an average session duration in this report of 0, do not panic. That doesn't mean that somebody left your site immediately. It might mean that, but what it more often means is that somebody looked at one page on your site, read that piece of content, and then just left without proceeding to a second page. So they actually spent much longer than 0 time on your website. But if they bounce like that and they don't proceed to a second page, it counts as a 0 in Google Analytics. So in that respect, if they don't go to more than one page, you're going to see this as a 0. That's one hang up of this report. But once we've got all of this custom report set up, the next thing we're going to do is actually get into the fun part of visualizing this data in Mapline. And so the way that we do that, now that I've accumulated a few more days worth of customer data on portent.com, is to export this as a CSV file, right, from GA. We just want to get the flat file out so that we can manipulate it in Excel and scrub it before it goes into Mapline. And so once you get it out into Excel, it looks something like this. I changed the neighborhood column to name, and the reason is that Mapline, one of their required fields is name. And so if you don't have a customer's name, so in this case we're doing this all anonymously, I'm just injecting the neighborhood name associated with this person. I'm still collecting the latitude and longitude for it to get on the map and create a very detailed pinpoint, along with the postal code and all of that website performance information alongside, but I'm just changing neighborhood to name here. And so after you're done doing that, you're going to want to highlight everything in this Excel spreadsheet and copy it. So it's Command A and Command C on the Mac, Control A and Control C on your PCs there. And then you're going to want to have that data in your clipboard so that when you create a new data set in Mapline, you're going to just literally paste it in there from Excel. So I'm in Mapline now. We have a really fancy account, but if you set one up that's just free, you're going to be able to try this out for a couple different data sets. So you create a new data set there. You name it something coherent. In this case, I named it Portent, the week of July 27th. So, since I'm gathering a few days worth of that data. And then I'm literally copying and pasting that information in from the spreadsheet. And then I hit continue there. And once I'm sure that information is read in, then I go and I hit new map. And so again, I like to name the maps and the data sets the same thing sometimes, just so that I know exactly what I'm looking at when I load up this map. And if I make more maps over time, I have a date as kind of a point of reference as when this map was created. So I create this new map. It's completely blank right now. There's no information in it. To get the information that we pasted in just a moment ago, you actually have to add data layers. And this is not like the data layer in Google Tag Manager. It's just what they mean by data layers is pinpoints. So data set pins. And then we select a couple things here. I selected the data that we just loaded in from Excel. And then I also had just a data set that's only one record, one location big. It's where the Portent offices are located. So you can see the ramifications here are we only have one office location, but if you had multiple stores, if you're a retail chain, you can load all of your stores in here. We have a client in here, I won't name names, but they have all 400 plus of their stores loaded in so that when we get the data out of analytics, we can actually lay it alongside their store locations and get some more rich insights based on that. And so after you load it in, you see your layers of where your business is located. So in this case, the orange is for Portent. It's kind of hiding under our website visitors there. I'll do a live demo of this so you can see how it actually looks in the program. But then you also have a layer for all of the customers that hit our website on Monday and Tuesday of this week. So, and it's just in the United States. So we're going to have to zoom in to really get to the fun part here. And so now what I wanted to do is just go through quickly a live demo of Mapline, just to show you how interactive this mapping program is and the kind of things that you can do with it to start to richly analyze. So here, let me go to my web browser, make sure all you guys can see that. And so here I'm live in Mapline with all of the data, and I'm really zoomed into Seattle here. So you can see that portent.com, or in case, actually Portent Inc. offices here, where I'm coming at you live from, are mapped out here in beautiful Pioneer Square. But then we have visitors from our website in Seattle. We got some folks from Belltown here, and we can actually click in and see how long they spent on the site. They were kind of just looky-loos. We got some downtown folks that have come in and seen our site, spent various sessions, and have come back actually 3 times. And they were from organic search. So we can see that people are finding us in the Google search results there. But we're going to actually back out and see outside of Seattle where people are. So we'll zoom up to King County level. We start to see some other information about people in Shoreline, people in Woodinville, across the Lake Washington and Bellevue. Down in the south end here, we see some folks, and they spent a little bit more time on the site than some of these other guys. We'll zoom out even more here to Washington State level, and we see some people in some hits in Spokane, some hits in Portland. And then we zoom out even further to the West Coast, and you get all kinds of people down in LA, California. So I can zoom in here, see the people in Santa Monica that are hitting our site in Culver City. So you can start to get a sense for the richness of how awesome this data is. But then let's say I'm not interested in everyone who hit the website. I just want to see who took key actions. You can filter. So you go in and you filter this information by goal completions. And I want to see not the people that took 0 actions on our website, but just people who took more than 0. And so I'll update that. And so it whittles down my list to the people that converted on our website on Monday and Tuesday and actually did something we wanted them to do. So we'll click in here and see that somebody in the St. Louis area spent 18 minutes on our site. They came in through organic search. They visited once, but they actually took 2 key actions that we wanted them to take on the site. And that could have been a variety of different things, just some content consumption, could have been filling out a form, anything like that. We look at Indiana here, we got people that spent 7 minutes on the site. And what you'll notice is that we don't always get neighborhood information, but even when we don't, we get the postal code. So if they're out in the boonies and they don't have a neighborhood associated with them, we get a great postal code anyway in that latitude and longitude. So you start to get the sense of how rich this data is, but we'll go back to the deck here. I've included some stills from this, so if you're unable to watch the video too, you can flip through the slides on SlideShare and see exactly kind of the same types of things that we saw in the demo. But that brings me to kind of my last few slides around the possibilities of what you can do with this data. So it's one thing to just have all of this rich information. It's another thing to actually take it and apply it to your business. So we can use it to see foot traffic around a local retail store. I kind of alluded to that earlier, but if you have multiple stores in one city, if you have multiple stores in one kind of metro area, you can really start to see how people are around those stores when they use their website and when they do things like get directions to your stores. If you're a publisher, you can sell advertising on this hyperlocal information. You can start to build a map of what your really detailed consumer looks like, not just in specific DMAs, but also in specific street corners. So if somebody, an advertiser that has a local business wants to advertise on your website, you can say, we have X amount of people that we know are coming to our website from this specific area around your store. You can also assess just a myriad of offline different marketing efforts really well with this. So being able to see how many people are hitting your website from a specific city or neighborhood that's hosting a trade show that you're at, that you've got a lot of information about. We've already used this tool to assess the radio ad impact that our ads have over time for a given radius. So we actually got a map of where a customer's radio ad was going to reach, and the radius around the radio tower where people can actually hear that station the best. And we did some analysis of growth over time of customers to the website in kind of the radius of that radio ad within earshot of it. You can assess billboard ads. You can assess direct mail campaigns that are sent to specific zip codes or to specific neighborhoods. This can start to become a real way that you interpret your local impact of these offline behaviors and see how it's driving people to the website.
I think that that's going to do it for us today. Again, if you've got any questions, just hit us at Portent. Michael, your Twitter handle is?
It's MWiegand, MWiegand. So I apologize in advance. My feed is mostly about scotch and music and warm blankets. So I do very little posting about marketing, but the stuff I do post is hopefully helpful.
Outstanding. So if you've got questions about hyperlocal analytics or scotch or great music or warm blankets, Michael will be there. So guys, again, join us next month. Thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your day.